The Intrepid sailed silently through the void, its sleek metal hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. Captain Mara Ellis sat in the command chair, eyes fixed on the navigation screens. The crew around her moved with calm precision, unaware of the invisible boundary they were about to cross. Their mission was simple: explore uncharted space, map star systems, and report anomalies. Humanity had sent explorers across countless light years, but none had dared approach the edge of what the galaxy considered untouchable. The alarms suddenly blared, cutting through the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Mara's eyes widened as the sensors flickered wildly. Strange energy readings surrounded them, unlike anything they had ever encountered. The stars ahead seemed to bend, warping and twisting as if the universe itself was warning them. "Report," Mara commanded, her voice steady despite the sudden tension. Lieutenant Kieran's voice came through the comms, shaking slightly. "Captain, we've entered an unknown region. Scanners indicate massive energy signatures. It's enormous. Mara, I don't think we were supposed to be here." Mara's jaw tightened. She knew something was wrong. They had crossed a border, a line that humanity had never crossed, but there was no time to retreat. The Intrepid shuddered violently as a massive ship appeared out of the void, dwarfing them completely. Its hull was black and crimson, polished and sharp like the talons of a predator. The human crew stared in awe and fear. A voice boomed over the intercom, mechanical yet laced with authority. "Unregistered vessel detected. State your purpose immediately." Mara took a deep breath. "This is the human ship Intrepid. We are explorers from Earth. We mean no harm. We do not know whose space this is." Silence. The only sound was the distant hum of the massive alien ship as it loomed closer. Mara could feel the tension thickening, each second stretching longer than the last. The crew looked at her, their eyes filled with fear, but she held their gaze firmly. She had to stay strong. If humans were to survive this encounter, they could not show weakness. The alien ship's sensors swept over the Intrepid, scanning every inch. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, a beam of light enveloped their ship, pulling them gently yet firmly toward the colossal structure in orbit around a purple gas giant. It was a station, larger than any human city, bristling with towers, antennas, and weapon systems. Humanity had never seen anything like it. As the human ship docked, the hatches opened slowly. The airlock hissed, and the crew stepped cautiously into the alien station. Every surface gleamed with strange metals. Every corridor seemed alive with a quiet energy. They were surrounded by towering figures, creatures with silver-scaled skin, sharp eyes, and expressions that radiated suspicion and disdain. The humans felt tiny, fragile even, but they did not falter. Their leader, Mara, stepped forward. "We are explorers," she said again, her voice firm, echoing slightly in the cavernous hall. "We did not know this space belonged to anyone. We wish no harm." A silver-scaled alien, taller than any human, with eyes sharp and calculating, approached. His voice was low and commanding. "You trespass where no outsider may enter. You will be judged. Prepare yourselves." Fear ran through the crew, but Mara remained calm. She could feel the weight of centuries of human survival coursing through her, the resilience and stubborn courage of a species that had survived floods, wars, and extinction. She squared her shoulders and faced the alien without flinching. "We are humans," she said quietly, yet with an unshakable tone. "We do not bow to fear. We do not surrender to power. If you choose to harm us, know that we will resist. And if you do not, we can learn from one another." The alien studied her, his expression unreadable. For the first time, Mara saw something flicker in his eyes, a mixture of confusion and curiosity. The Zetharian Empire had never encountered beings who responded to threats with calm defiance instead of fear. Something had shifted, and Mara felt it. In that moment, she knew humans were about to leave a mark they did not even intend, a mark that could change the course of an entire empire. The crew followed Mara, hearts pounding, but their steps were steady. They had crossed a line, not by choice but by accident. Yet, in that accidental crossing, the humans carried the unspoken truth of their species. They were not fragile. They were not weak. They were unpredictable, fearless, and unstoppable when faced with the unknown. The Empire had detected them, and humanity had answered, without a weapon raised, without an act of aggression, only with courage. The humans were led through the massive corridors of the alien station. Every step echoed off the polished walls, and every shadow seemed alive with watchful eyes. Tall figures with silver scales and piercing eyes followed them silently, their presence intimidating. The humans could feel the weight of centuries of empire in every glance and gesture. The Zitharians had built this station to impress, to intimidate, and to remind everyone that power belonged to them. Yet the humans did not shrink back. Captain Mara Ellis kept her head high. "Stay calm," she whispered to her crew. "Watch, listen, but never show fear. That is our strength." Her words were simple, but they carried the centuries of human resilience. The crew nodded, holding themselves with a quiet pride that the Zitharians could not yet understand. Finally, they reached a large chamber, the command hall. It was massive, filled with strange technology, pulsating lights, and holographic screens that displayed star systems far beyond human reach. At the center stood the commander of the station, Varlock, a silver-scaled alien whose presence filled the room like a storm cloud. He was tall, broad, and every inch designed to command obedience. "You have entered the Zitharian Empire without permission," Varlock's voice boomed. It was more than sound. It carried authority, danger, and the unspoken threat of destruction. "Explain yourselves, humans. Why have you trespassed?" Mara stepped forward. She knew that in that moment every gesture mattered. "We did not know this space belonged to anyone," she said firmly. "We are explorers from Earth. We mean no harm. We only wish to learn and to return home safely." Varlock's eyes narrowed. He tilted his head, studying her as though she were an insect under a magnifying glass. "Your species is naive. You walk where others fear to tread, yet you expect mercy. You will be punished for trespassing." The humans stood silently, not with fear, but with defiance. The Zitharians had never encountered such a response. Every other species they had dominated would bow, beg, or submit immediately. But the humans, small, fragile, and seemingly weak, stood tall and unflinching. "Punish us if you must," Mara said, her voice steady. "But know this, humans do not bow, we do not flee, we do not break. If you try to harm us, you will see the cost." For a long moment the room was still. Varlock's gaze pierced them, trying to find weakness, a crack in their resolve. But there was none. Humans did not look for approval, did not ask for mercy. They only stood, hearts steady, faces calm, and eyes full of courage. A murmur ran through the Zitharian guards. They had never seen anything like it. One of them whispered to another, "Why do they not fear us? Why do they not tremble?" The words were soft, but the meaning was clear. The humans were dangerous not because of their strength, but because of their unpredictability. Varlock's claws clenched. He had thought intimidation was enough to bend any species. He had thought fear alone would make them obedient. Yet these humans did not waver. For the first time in centuries, the Empire faced creatures who refused to be ruled by fear. Mara looked around at her crew. "Remember this," she said quietly. "We survive not because we are the strongest, but because we are united, because we never surrender. That is what makes us dangerous." Varlock's expression darkened. He could not understand it, and that made him wary. The humans had broken the rules of the Empire without firing a shot, without threatening anyone with weapons, simply by refusing to be afraid. In that moment, a small spark ignited within the chamber. The humans' courage, their defiance, planted a seed of uncertainty among the Zitharians. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there, a whisper that perhaps not all beings could be controlled, not all could be dominated, and that the Empire might not be as unchallenged as it believed. Mara felt it too, a quiet thrill. She had not expected to inspire fear or respect so quickly, but humans always found ways to surprise. They had entered a world that sought to crush them, yet they had arrived as equals, not through force, but through courage, unity, and unshakable resolve. The Empire had noticed humanity, and it was beginning to understand a terrifying truth. Humans were not ordinary, and they were far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. The humans were confined to a section of the massive Zetherian station, not as guests but as prisoners under constant watch. Guards patrolled every corridor, eyes sharp, claws ready. The humans could feel the weight of alien suspicion pressing down on them. Yet even under surveillance, they did not cower. Every glance between crew members carried calm assurance. Mara knew that fear would not save them. Only action, courage, and resolve could. Within hours, the humans discovered problems in the station the Zetherians had ignored. Life support systems flickered, power relays hummed dangerously, and navigation arrays drifted out of alignment. To the Zetherians, these were minor issues, unworthy of immediate attention. But to the humans, neglect was a risk. Mara's engineers moved quickly, hands steady, minds sharp, repairing systems with a combination of intuition and experience. Lieutenant Kieran called out, "Captain, these systems are centuries old. How are we even understanding them?" Mara smiled slightly, her eyes scanning the humming panels. "We adapt. That is what humans do." Soon the station's failing systems stabilized. Power returned to full capacity. Warning lights faded and the air hummed smoothly with life once again. Zetherian engineers arrived to investigate, and their jaws nearly dropped. These outsiders, tiny in number and unarmed, had corrected flaws. Their Empire's best technicians had overlooked for decades. Varlock observed silently from the shadows, his eyes narrowing. He had intended to show dominance, to intimidate the humans into obedience. But instead he witnessed something the Empire had never seen before. Creatures who faced danger calmly, assessed the problem, and acted with precision. Their strength was not measured in weapons or numbers, but in ingenuity and unity. A young Zetherian technician whispered to his colleague, How can they do this? They are not even trained for our systems." "Focus on one thing," Mara said softly. Overhearing them, "Humans survive because we care. We notice what others ignore. We act when others hesitate. That is our strength." Word spread quickly among the station's inhabitants. Humans moved through the corridors not as prisoners, but as problem solvers, restoring power, stabilizing navigation, and repairing life support. Where the Empire had relied on fear and authority, humans relied on cooperation, courage, and clarity of thought. Slowly, whispers of admiration began to replace murmurs of doubt. Varlock clenched his claws in frustration. The humans had not only survived, but had exposed the Empire's weaknesses, not through conflict, but through competence and unshakable calm. He realized that they were dangerous in ways he had never predicted. Unpredictable, resourceful, and fearless, the humans were a force the Zetherians could not calculate. Mara gathered her crew in a small room, away from prying eyes. "They will try to control us," she said quietly. "They will test our limits. But remember, we are not weak, we are human, and humans endure. We survive because we choose courage over fear every time." The crew nodded, determination shining in their eyes. They had already proven themselves in a world designed to intimidate. Now they would prove that humanity was more than just physical strength. It was resilience, intelligence, and heart. Outside, Zetherians watched as humans moved calmly among the station's systems. Some began to question their own beliefs. If these fragile-looking creatures could succeed, what did that mean for the Empire's unquestioned authority? Seeds of doubt spread quietly, like sparks in dry grass. Varlock understood the danger. Humans had entered the Empire by mistake, yet they had already altered its rhythm. The Empire prided itself on absolute control, but humans refused to be controlled. Every action, every repair, every calm word in the midst of fear was a statement. Humans would not bend, would not break, and would not bow. Mara paused for a moment, looking at her crew. "We did not come here to fight," she said softly. "We came here by accident, but we are making our presence known. And sometimes, that is all it takes to change the course of history." In the silence of the humming station, humans moved, with quiet confidence. They were fragile in appearance, yes, but inside burned a fire the Empire had never imagined. The Zetherians could destroy ships, deploy weapons, or impose rules, but courage, ingenuity, and unity, those could not be crushed. And for the first time, the Zetherian Empire truly understood that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had believed. The humans moved through the station with quiet purpose, repairing systems and stabilizing areas that the Zetherians had long ignored. Every small act, restoring power, clearing blockages, recalibrating navigation, did more than fix equipment. It sent a message. Humans did not rely on fear, authority, or threats. They relied on courage, intelligence, and unity. And the Zetherians were beginning to notice. In the corridors, some Zetherian citizens watched from shadows, their silver scales shimmering under the station's lights. They had grown accustomed to fear, to obeying without question. Authority ruled their lives. Yet the humans did not bow, did not beg, did not flinch. Instead, they acted, laughed quietly among themselves, and carried their fearlessness like a shield. For the first time, some Zetherians wondered, was there another way to live? A young engineer whispered to his friend, "Look at them. They face danger without trembling. How can they be so calm?" "Perhaps," his friend replied cautiously, "we have been wrong to fear everything. Perhaps there is strength in choice, in courage." Mara noticed these subtle shifts. Humans had not spoken directly to the Zetherians, but their actions were louder than any words. She gathered her crew in a small maintenance hub, speaking quietly so only they could hear. "Every action matters. Every word, every choice. It shows who we are. They will watch us, learn from us, and some of them may decide that they want more than fear. They may choose freedom, courage, or hope. That is how change begins." Her crew nodded, hearts swelling with quiet pride. Humanity had survived wars, natural disasters, and centuries of struggle. They had endured because they chose courage over fear, unity over isolation, and hope over despair. Now that same spirit had quietly ignited something in an empire that had never known resistance like this. As the humans worked, whispers spread through the station. Engineers, administrators, and even some low-ranking officers began to question the rigid rules that governed their lives. "Why do they not fear?" one murmured. "If they can stand unbroken, perhaps we could too." Varlock, observing from the shadows, felt unease settle in his chest. The humans were not just surviving. They were inspiring, challenging the Zetherian system without a single act of violence. "This is dangerous," he growled. "They are changing things, changing people. They are too unpredictable." Word of human actions reached the higher levels of the station, stirring conversations the Empire had long suppressed. Citizens, who had never dared to think for themselves, began to see possibility. Perhaps life could be different. Perhaps fear was not the only path. Humans had come by accident, yet they were awakening something centuries old, something the Empire had buried deep. The desire to choose freely, to act with courage. Mara moved among the people quietly, offering words of encouragement without judgment or command. "You can choose," she said softly. "Fear is not the only way. You can act, you can decide, you can be free." The words were simple, yet they carried weight. Humans never demanded obedience. They only offered possibility. And possibility was enough to ignite hope. The station's energy subtly shifted. Where there had been rigid order, there was now hesitation. Where there had been obedience, there were questions. Where there had been fear, there were sparks of courage. Humans had not fought anyone yet, but in every corridor they passed, the Empire felt a tremor of something dangerous. Inspiration. Varlock's eyes burned with frustration. He had expected submission, compliance, and fear. Instead, he faced a truth the Empire rarely acknowledged. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of spreading courage like wildfire. Mara returned to her crew, glancing at each member. "We didn't come here to conquer," she said quietly. "But sometimes, all it takes to change the world is to show people what courage looks like. The choice is theirs, but the spark is ours." And in the quiet hum of the Zytherian station, that spark began to grow, small but undeniable, planting the seeds of a quiet rebellion that the Empire had never imagined. The calm in the Zytherian station did not last long. Reports of humans repairing critical systems and inspiring whispers of rebellion reached the Empire's central command. Their response was swift and brutal. A fleet of warships emerged from hyperspace, massive vessels bristling with weapons, moving with precision and deadly intent. The humans had not sought conflict, yet it was coming for them. Captain Mara Ellis stood on the Intrepid's bridge, staring at the approaching fleet. Her crew felt the weight of the moment, hearts pounding, but fear did not control them. "Prepare defensive systems," she ordered. "Shields up, evasive protocols ready. Remember, fear is their tool. Courage is ours." The first shots fired, lasers streaking across space with deadly accuracy. The humans moved quickly, not recklessly. Each maneuver was calculated, each decision precise. They had no illusions about the Empire's strength, yet they relied on the same qualities that had carried them through centuries of survival: intelligence, unity, and courage. Lieutenant Kieran called out, "Captain, they're attempting to disable our engines. If they succeed, we're trapped." Mara's eyes never left the screens. "Not if we outthink them. Divert power to shields, then to thrusters. Use the station's layout to our advantage. They will expect us to panic. We won't give them that." The humans moved with an almost unnatural coordination. Using debris fields and the station's architecture, they lured the Empire's warships into vulnerable positions. The humans did not attack aggressively. They defended cleverly, turning the attackers' own power against them. Each success, small but significant, shocked the Zytherian forces. Back on the station, Mara could see the reactions of the Zytherians who had begun to question their empire. They watched as the humans, fragile in appearance, outmaneuvered and outthought Vess. Aaron more armed. Fear, once absolute, began to waver in their eyes. Some dared to hope. Barlock's claws clenched in frustration. His carefully laid plans crumbled under the humans' unpredictability. "This is impossible," he hissed. "They are only a handful. And yet they act as if they are a fleet of 10,000. How can this be?" Mara's voice rang over the comms to the Zytherian admiral, calm and unwavering. "We did not come here to fight, but if you attack us, know this. Humanity survives. Humanity fights and humanity never forgets. Every choice you make to harm us will be met with resistance you cannot anticipate." The admiral's response was silence. He had never encountered beings who responded to threats with unshakable resolve instead of fear. Every plan he had relied on, intimidation, aggression, and fear, was useless against creatures who did not bend. Inside the station, the Zytherian citizens, inspired by the humans' courage, began to aid them quietly. Engineers manipulated systems to help humans maneuver. Administrators diverted resources to protect them, and some even guided them through the most dangerous sectors of the station. What had begun as accidental arrival had turned into a subtle uprising. Mara looked at her crew, pride swelling in her chest. "They think they can crush us with numbers and firepower," she said. "But courage and unity are forces they cannot measure. We are human, and humans endure." The battle raged, but the humans' ingenuity held. Shields held, engines remained functional, and clever tactics allowed them to repel wave after wave of attacks. Slowly, steadily, the tide turned, not through raw strength, but through quick thinking, cooperation, and fearless determination. The Zetherian Empire, vast and proud, was beginning to realize a terrifying truth. Humans were not ordinary. They could not be crushed by fear. They could not be controlled by threats, and every attempt to destroy them only revealed how unpredictable and dangerous humanity truly was. For the first time, Mara allowed herself a small, quiet smile. They had not sought war, but they were ready. They had not asked for conflict. Yet, they were prepared to defend, survive, and inspire hope. The Empire had struck, but humans were far from defeated, and in that moment, the galaxy began to understand something it had never expected. Humans were not just survivors, they were unstoppable when challenged. The humans had survived the first onslaught of the Zetherian fleet, but the battle was far from over. Captain Mara Ellis stood on the bridge of the Intrepid, her eyes scanning the starfield as enemy vessels repositioned. Her crew worked in seamless coordination, their hands steady, their minds sharp. Fear did not grip them. Instead, determination burned bright in every face. Humanity was not built to surrender. Lieutenant Kieran adjusted the shields, voice calm but firm. "Captain, they're trying to flank us. 2 of their cruisers are moving to cut off our escape." Mara nodded. "Then we'll use that against them. Draw them in, then split their forces. Use the station's layout. Let them overreach. Patience is our weapon." The humans moved with uncanny precision. Each decision was calculated, each maneuver a test of the enemy's expectations. The Zetherians, used to obedience and fear, had never faced opponents who responded to danger with strategy and courage instead of panic. Every step the humans took turned the Empire's confidence into confusion. On the station, whispers of hope grew louder. Zetherian citizens who had once followed orders without question began assisting the humans quietly. Engineers rerouted power to strengthen human shields. Navigators shared data on enemy movements, and even low-ranking officers offered tips on defensive positioning. Humans had not asked for this help. Their courage had earned it. The spark of rebellion had become a small flame. Varlock's claws trembled in frustration as he watched the humans' movements. "This is impossible," he muttered. "They are too few. Yet they move as if they are an entire fleet. How can such creatures defy us at every turn?" Mara understood that the Zetherians had underestimated humanity. They had assumed fear would control her crew, but humans did not bow to intimidation. They had turned every disadvantage into opportunity. Every challenge was a chance to demonstrate ingenuity, courage, and unshakable unity. The Intrepid's crew executed a daring maneuver, weaving through the station's intricate corridors and hidden pathways. The Zetherian cruisers followed, confident they would trap the humans. But the humans had anticipated this. Using the station's overlooked systems, they created diversions, rerouted power to mislead sensors, and guided enemy ships into vulnerable positions. One by one, the Zetherian vessels were disabled or forced to retreat. Mara's voice, over the comms, carried calm authority. "We do not seek war," she said. "But if you attack, know this: humanity does not break. We fight, we endure, and we never forget." The words were simple, yet they carried power. Zetherian forces, trained to dominate and intimidate, hesitated. Some paused, unsure whether to continue the attack. Their fear had been replaced with confusion. They had never faced creatures who stood fearless in the face of overwhelming power. The humans had not conquered through violence alone. They had conquered through courage, intelligence, and hope. Every act of defiance, every display of calm under pressure, inspired those around them. The station's population, once obedient, fearful, and silent, now whispered about possibilities. Freedom, courage, and choice had returned in a subtle, unstoppable wave. Mara looked at her crew, pride swelling in her chest. "They may have numbers and weapons," she said softly. "But we have something stronger: unity and courage. That is how humans survive. That is how we turn the tide." As the Zetherian fleet withdrew to regroup, the humans secured the station. They had not won through sheer force, yet they had shifted the balance of power. The Empire had struck, but humanity had survived, adapted, and inspired change. In the quiet moments after the battle, Mara allowed herself a deep breath. The galaxy had underestimated humans. They had assumed fear would control her crew. They had assumed that strength alone dictated the outcome. But humans had proven that courage, unity, and hope could defy even the most powerful empire. And in that victory, small yet profound, Mara knew that the humans were not just surviving. They were rewriting the rules of the game. The tide had turned, and the Zetherian Empire would never be the same. The battle had ended, but its echoes lingered across the Zetherian Empire. The humans stood aboard the Intrepid, the hum of repaired systems filling the ship. Captain Mara, Ellis gazed out at the stars, each one a silent witness to the events that had unfolded. They had not sought war, but they had survived it, and in doing so they had changed an entire civilization. The station, once a symbol of oppression and fear, was now quiet in a different way. The whispers of rebellion had spread like sparks, through dry grass, small but undeniable. Citizens who had never dared to think or act freely now felt the stirrings of hope. Some engineers, once loyal only to orders, had helped the humans sabotage enemy plans, not to destroy, but to protect life. They had seen courage, and it had inspired them. Varlock stood in the command hall, his claws clenched and eyes filled with frustration and awe. The humans had survived impossible odds. They had outthought, outmaneuvered, and outlasted forces meant to crush them. And they had done so without surrendering their humanity, without killing unnecessarily, without seeking vengeance, simply by standing unbroken and inspiring those around them. Mara approached him, her expression calm, yet her presence commanding. "You believed power alone could control us," she said softly. "You assumed fear would make us obedient. You were wrong. Humans are not led by fear. We survive because we choose courage. We endure because we choose unity. And we change the world simply by refusing to bow." Varlock's eyes widened slightly. No species had ever spoken to him like this, with neither pleading nor threat, but with quiet authority. For the first time, he realized that humans were not creatures to dominate. They were forces of nature, unpredictable and unstoppable. The humans did not linger to celebrate. They repaired what needed repairing, ensured life support and navigation systems were stable, and offered guidance to Zetherians willing to learn from them. They did not demand loyalty, and they did not impose rule. Their strength lay in their example, in their courage, and in the hope they inspired. Mara turned to her crew. "We came here by accident," she said, "but sometimes the universe allows accidents that change everything. We have not conquered this empire. We have shown it what courage looks like. That is enough." As the humans prepared to depart, the station's citizens watched silently. Some bowed, not in fear but in respect. They had witnessed something extraordinary. A species small in number but vast in spirit had entered their world, refused to be broken, and left a mark that could never be erased. The Intrepid lifted off, engines glowing against the purple haze of the gas giant below. The humans did not leave destruction behind. They left inspiration, hope, and the undeniable truth that even the greatest empire could be challenged by courage and unity. Mara glanced at the stars ahead, her thoughts calm, yet filled with determination. "We do not conquer," she whispered to herself. "We do not destroy. We only live as we are, and that is enough to change the universe." And as the Intrepid sailed into the vast unknown, the Zetherian Empire reeled from a lesson it would never forget. Humans could not be predicted, could not be crushed, and could not